Thank you for tuning in to the Our View podcast. On today's episode, I welcome my guest, Celina Wesneski. Celina lives with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, also known as EDS. Join our conversation as we discuss her journey to arriving at a diagnosis, our mutual appreciation for Tony Award winner Ali Stroker, and the importance of strong family and friendship bonds. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this. As you heard my story a little bit, 10 years ago, I started the Our View company to raise awareness about disabilities, and specifically my story, to use myself as as an example of what people can achieve with, even though they have a disability. So with the whole COVID-19 situation going on, I've I've found some inspiration to do new things, and one of those things is to create this podcast. And I want to use the podcast to share a little bit more about my story. I do keep a blog that I don't post on a regular basis, but to use some blog posts as some episode content where I can expand on the post that I did, or just other stories that I have, but also to tell the story of other people and what they're achieving in life, and just to bring awareness about the different types of disabilities, those that are visible. I use crutches and a wheelchair, so you can see when I walk up to you that I have some type of mobility disability. But there are other people who have the invisible disabilities that you can't necessarily see, from the outward appearance. So I want to bring awareness to those types of disabilities as well. So to start off the episode, I would like for you to just introduce yourself and tell the listeners just anything about yourself, who you are and where you're from, and some family information, and what do you like to do for fun, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, my name's Celina Wesneski. I live in California, Southern California. I'm originally from Utah. I moved out to California because I was a performer and I was in a performing group, and was able to tour performing for several years, went to Australia, New Zealand, different places like that. So that's what I did for a long time. I'm married for 15 years now. We've been together for 20 years. And I used to run after I was done performing full time, I ran a staffing company for about 10 years. And then my health kind of declined over that time. So I'm not working anymore. So I live here with my husband and my little Old English bulldog, and
Oh, I love bulldogs.
and for fun, I love to go to the theater. I love the outdoors. So it's been challenging as I've become more and more disabled, you could say, to find, to do things I used to be able to do. But I'm finding new ways of doing all the things that I love. So that's
Yeah. Yeah, so you mentioned that you were a performer and you were in a touring group. What I didn't mention was that you and my cousin Brooke
Yes.
met each other in the was it Young Americans
Young
group?
Americans, yep. So we were
Yes.
both performers together in that, and then also my husband and I had a band, and she would also come perform with us in our band sometimes. So
Oh,
yeah,
great.
so that's
Yeah.
how we know each other.
Yeah, I remember being much younger as a kid, and that the Young Americans group would tour, and they came to New Jersey
Mm-hmm.
one
Well, you've
time, and
seen us.
Yes, I have. Yeah, so you all came to New Jersey one time, and a group of our family who live in New Jersey, we came to see you all. Could you go into what your diagnosis is called, and what are some of the symptoms that you were experiencing, before your diagnosis, and what made you, start to look into what the possible issue could have been.
Sure. So it's kind of a three-parter, and I'll try to
Okay.
make it not such a long story
Oh
because
no, take your time, and I think the more information we share, the better it
okay.
is for people. Yeah, so I don't mind.
So I had health issues from since birth that they could never figure out what was wrong, like just chronic infections and crying all the time, things like that. I was slow to grow, like I had delayed bone growth and things like that. So they had taken me to a geneticist when I was a little baby back in 1981, but they couldn't find anything wrong because I met all the milestones and everything like that. By the time I was 11, I had just constant pain all the time. I was, in and out of the hospital and in and out of tests and running all these tests, trying to figure out what was going on. And so when I was 11, one time I was in the ER with just really severe leg pain that had me just screaming. And the doctor on call diagnosed me with fibromyalgia when I was 11.
Uh,
So at that time, it was like, okay, we have a word for it at least, but this was in like 1992.
mhm.
And I was told I was like the first child diagnosed with fibromyalgia in Utah. And so they didn't really know what to do with me. They didn't believe it. A lot of doctors didn't believe it was a real diagnosis, but it was like enough that they just stopped looking. And we kind of accepted it as that's what the diagnosis is, and they didn't really know what it was. So throughout my life, things just kept getting worse. But I was able to really push through pain and push through things like I skateboarded, I did dance class, I
Wow.
was doing musical theater, I was doing all this stuff. And then afterwards, I would just be at night crying in pain. And I would have a lot of injuries that just wouldn't heal. So I'd injure myself a lot and it'd be really hard to heal. And it would seem like why, you know, we just couldn't figure out what's going on. So I, was able to perform and keep doing things and keep pushing, and I was able to work a really stressful job, and my health just kept declining. So, like I would say in my 20s, I started needing to use a cane if I was going any type of a distance. I just didn't have the strength to to walk very far. And then, if I were at Disneyland or something like that, I would need a wheelchair. I couldn't stand that long. That was by my mid 20s.
Right.
And then by my early 30s, my health in every way just started going downhill where I was no longer able to really walk. Um, Pain wise, weakness wise, I had a lot of other things that were going on that were GI related, bladder related, chronic migraines, really severe fatigue, like immune system issues, like all these different things. And mind you, from like 11 to 30s, I'd still been like going to doctors saying something is wrong. Like, I don't believe this is just fibromyalgia. Not that it's just fibromyalgia, but it just seemed like something else was going on. And there were all these diagnoses I was getting that I just, in my heart, knew they had to be related. They couldn't just be like 20 different diagnoses that don't relate. So,
Right.
by 35 is when I found out I had gastroparesis, which is like a slowing of your motility. So it's not cute, but I was vomiting like 20 times a day and they just couldn't figure out why. So they diagnosed me with gastroparesis. And after that, I was speaking with my primary care and we just couldn't figure out what was going on. And 2 days after my 37th birthday, I went to a geneticist for the first time, or I guess the second time, but first time for me. It's like we had exhausted every test, everything. And so I went to a geneticist 2 days after my 37th birthday. And at this point, I hadn't been working for 2 years. I was so sick and I had really lost my mobility and I just couldn't do anything at that point. And so I was at the geneticist and she came in with her staff and with her residents, and they were looking over me, asking me a huge family history, and she was pointing out a lot of things on me, and at the end of it, you know, she had said, "You don't have fibromyalgia, you have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome." And I was like, "What?" Because all these years, you know,
Right.
for 20,
All
25
those
years, I had been doing everything related to fibromyalgia. I had tried every drug. I had even gone to Alabama to see a doctor there that had a lot of work with people with fibromyalgia, even having a
Wow.
surgery to help with it. And I just tried because I was so young when I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia that I tried everything in those 25 years and nothing worked. And I just couldn't understand why. And so I found out, no, you have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, type 3, which is the hypermobile type. And there's about 13 types of EDS. And so what it is for me, for most people with Ehlers-Danlos, it's your connective tissue that holds everything together is lax. So if you can imagine, like most people's connective tissue is like a rubber band. Mine is like the rubber band has worn out and like the elastic's gone out of your socks and it's just loose. So to make up for it, the rest of my body, like my muscles and everything else, has to hold everything together. So that's why I'm in a constant state of like muscle spasms and things like
Right.
that. So it also affects, you know, internally. There was a lot of things that didn't make sense. I was having a different GI type of a surgery, and they looked at my gallbladder while they were in there, and it was literally just like falling apart, which I didn't have my EDS diagnosis at the time, so they were just like, "I don't know what's going on, but like your gallbladder is falling apart."
Oh
So
man.
and there's been a lot of internal things like that. So the connective tissue within your organs can also, you know, come apart. Um, so basically, you know, it causes a lot of pain, and there's a lot of comorbidities that go along with it. So I have autonomic dysfunction. So it's a problem regulating your temperature, regulating your blood pressure. And there's just a big, long list of comorbidities that go along with it. But yeah, it wasn't until 2 years ago that I actually had a name for what was going on my whole life, because it's a
Now
genetic condition.
is EDS, is that something new that they found, or has it been around for a long time, and it just took a long time for you to be diagnosed with it?
Well, it's been around a long time, but it was considered pretty rare.
Okay.
Um, my primary care physician, who I've been with for 20 years, and I told him I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Have you ever heard of it? And he was like, I've never heard of it. So
Oh
a lot of
wow.
doctors have never heard of it. But also there's like a third part, which is after my finding out about the EDS, we decided to do some further genetic testing. And last September, I found out that I have a variant of a mutation that's never been seen before in the history of genetics. So right now I'm the only person alive that's known
Wow.
to have a certain variant, which has no name besides mine, I guess, for now. It's just a bunch of letters and numbers, but they've just never seen it before. So we did some further, genetic investigating, because a lot of the symptoms I had also, I have episodes of paralysis and different things like that that just didn't quite fit. So we did some further genetic testing, and then we found out, actually, like, we don't know what this is, and you're the first person on record to have it. So
Wow.
it's kind of the three-part story, and that,
Yeah.
so right now there's so much happening with genetics, and it's happening so quickly that doctors can't even keep up with it. So
Yeah.
they have sent my genetic code to like the National Institute of Health, and as more people get genetic testing and it's becoming more available and affordable for people, then I don't want to say hopefully, because I don't want anyone to go through what I've been through, but maybe if a baby is born with my same mutation, I would be able to at least give them an idea of what they can expect, because my whole life I've just been going blind and not knowing what's going on day to day, and
Yeah, and
it's
then
hard to
having
say.
the misdiagnosis of the fibromyalgia like that, and you said you were, doing everything,
Everything.
uh, everything thinking that that's what you had, and not seeing any results on the positive side of doing everything you're
Right.
told for the fibromyalgia like that. That definitely has to be frustrating, I'm sure.
Frustrating, yeah, to me and to doctors who are just going,
Right.
luckily, I did have a lot of doctors that didn't believe me along the way, because they're just like, this doesn't look like fibromyalgia, and fibromyalgia isn't this progressive, and it doesn't cause this and this, or they believe me that I have something wrong, but they just didn't know what it was. So it
Yeah.
just took a long time.
Wow. That's, yeah. It was really a lifelong process for you up until, like you said,
Yeah,
a couple of years ago to find
yeah.
out what it was. So is EDS, is it, it's that it's a progressive type of diagnosis where through time it progresses into a more serious situation?
For most people, yes,
Okay.
it's one of those conditions where most people have a lot of similarities, and then there's also a ton of differences. So, like a big problem with EDS is it causes, because your connective tissue is lax. We have a lot of subluxations and dislocations. So for
Okay.
me, I can just move, and my shoulder could come out of, uh, it could dislocate or subluxate. Same with like my jaw, my hands, my wrists, my hips, my knees, my ankles. So I have a lot of subluxations. I don't have that many dislocations, but a lot of people with EDS have constant dislocations, which leads them to have a lot of surgeries and things like that. There's also a lot of common comorbidities with EDS. The type that I have are like a Chiari malformation,
Okay.
cervical cranial instability, and CSF leaks, like a lot of different things. So it presents in a lot of different ways. Like some kids are, um, what I've learned, what's helped me the most is, like I went to a geneticist thinking like, I didn't know what I thought. I just, it had been so long of just not knowing that I did kind of have a feeling that I was going to get an answer. Like I just kind of intuitively felt like this was my kind of my last chance to see if we could find out what was wrong with me. But they kind of go, geneticists are like, this is what you have, like go get your heart checked out, because of the internal organ issues, like you can have aortic um, dissection and things like that, and
Mhm.
go see these types of doctors, but then they just send you on your way. So what helped me was I joined on Facebook an Ehlers-Danlos syndrome community, which was like, hey, I just got diagnosed. I don't know what's happening. Can you
Yeah.
help me? Where do I go? Because my primary care physician had no idea what it was. And I didn't know. And, when I was first diagnosed, it was like I just started crying, and my doctor was like worried. And I was like, you don't understand. I'm crying because I'm so happy to finally know what this is, because it had been
Right.
so long. And, I was in a wheelchair at that point, and people would say, why are you in a wheelchair? And it'd be like, I really don't know. You
Yeah.
could say fibromyalgia or something like that, but people are like, well, my aunt has fibromyalgia and she took a vitamin and she's fine. So it was like,
Right.
it was really hard for a long time to like know that there's something else going on with you, but you just don't know what it is. So when I finally like had a word for it and I understood it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. It was like I was just like over the moon happy, and my husband was like, kind of like, did you just hear what I heard? Because like I was so happy to just know what it was. And
Right.
then I think like a few months later, it hit me, like it is a really, it's a tough thing. But the thing is, I've been dealing with it my whole life. I just didn't have a name for it. But it's like,
True.
once like it was like I had put a lot of pressure on myself, especially when you think it's fibromyalgia. You think like, I just need to diet and exercise and do this and take this medicine and I'll be fine, because people are living their lives and why can't I? And then once I finally found out, no, this is like a serious condition and there's a reason you're feeling this way. And like it wasn't my fault that I didn't get better, all these years. Like that was a big relief. But then it was also like, oh, I'm not going to get better. So that kind of
Yeah.
was a hard thing to deal with. That to come to terms with, like, oh, like, because when it's fibro or something like that, you think there's going to be a drug that's going to come out or there's going to be this. But when it's a genetic condition that you can't fix your connective tissue, like,
Right.
so
Yeah.
there was a definite grieving point of going, oh, like this isn't going to get better. So it
Yeah.
is different for a lot of people, but a lot of similarities as well. But for
And
me,
I think that's a really big important thing. Um, Even for myself, having spina bifida, and with any type of disability, I think it's important to to realize that although two people may have the same uh, diagnosis in name, it
mhm,
can look similar and then it can look very different for two different people, because everybody's body is different. And uh, what exists for I hear it all the time, oh, well, I know someone who has spina bifida and they don't have to use a wheelchair, and now there's a fetal surgery that you can have for spina bifida before the baby is born. There's a very popular Facebook page with a little boy who had the surgery, and I think he's 3 years old now, maybe 4, and so it's like very interesting to hear people say like, oh, well, this person has the same thing and they don't, it doesn't look like you. Well, every
yeah,
body is literally different, so that's
completely.
yeah, it's very important to stress that, I think,
And
for
it's been
people.
just so helpful for me to find these groups and to just be like, hey, I've got this going on. Does this sound, does this related to EDS? Is this what's happening? And it's been amazing, just over the past 2 years to find like thousands of people that I felt so alone in what I was going through. To be 37 and not know you had this genetic condition since birth,
Right.
and just be like,
Yeah.
what is going on for all these years? And then to have like thousands of people that are in the same position.
Yeah,
And, a lot
the
of them,
Facebook groups have really
oh my
the Facebook
gosh.
groups, and they've been very helpful, even for me with I told you we had a tropical storm that came through here yesterday, and the pressure change in the air, it really impacts my shunt, and I get really bad headaches, and it's it goes down my neck, and even part of today, like my neck was still stiff because of all of that. But
Yeah.
and it's happened for years, and I never really put it together until the last I would say maybe 5 or 6 years or so, because I belong to some Facebook groups for spina bifida, and people were saying, "Oh, my son or I, we experience headaches in our shunt whenever a big storm is coming through or something like that."
And then you're like,
And I'm like, "Wait, that's like that's me. That happens to me." So it's really, those groups are really helpful at times for sure.
then then a lot of, oh my gosh, like that's what was happening like for the last 2 years. And then it's also
Yes.
been great, like that I've been able to help people as well. Like even though like, I'm only 2 years into it, like I've still been doing similar thing, you know what I mean? And there's new people coming in all the time that like you feel like you can help, and that's been really helpful for me, especially feeling like I haven't been able to work and I haven't been able to do things. It's just like something I can do to help somebody, or, to be like, you're not
Yeah.
alone in this. And I also went through this, and here's what type of doctor you need to see. And here, stuff like that. So that's been really helpful and just a big part of my journey.
Yeah, that's really, and even like you said, there are new people, um, getting diagnosed every day. So hopefully, even through this podcast, that somebody
Yeah.
will hear and be able to realize and hear some of the symptoms, and maybe be able to get some help, through listening through to your story. And so it's really really great, and thank you so much for sharing all of that. And it's I'm sure it was quite, like you said, quite a relief to finally have a proper diagnosis after all that time. So it's really
For sure.
can be very frustrating, like you said, for yourself and for the doctors, because it's they're just trying their best to figure out what's wrong as well.
Yep.
So my next question is, how has your diagnosis changed the way that you had to live your life? And I know you touched on it uh, a little bit earlier.
When Yes, when I was in my 20s, I would oftentimes need to use a cane if I was going distances. But I was really able to push through a lot, and I probably did some damage to myself. By the time I was in my early 30s, I was just getting to where I could barely walk a few steps. So I was using a walker. Um, it was really hard, for me, because everyone around me is so supportive. Like my husband is extremely supportive. My friends, I have like an amazing group of friends that just never treated me any differently. And they don't, most of my friends, we were Young Americans together. So we were dancing and singing and teaching kids and like doing all this stuff. So they've known me, as somebody who was singing and dancing and doing all this stuff, to all of a sudden, like I'm at their house with a walker. And it was really hard for me to accept it and to be okay with it. And then I finally, couldn't do it anymore, and I had to get a wheelchair. And I remember, because of my shoulders, like I didn't understand it then, but because my shoulders sublux when I'm moving a lot, I couldn't wheel myself.
Okay,
And
yeah.
so I had to switch. So I had to get an electric wheelchair. And I remember the day, like we got the lift in my car, I just started bawling because I was just like, this is real.
Yeah.
And so that was really hard for me to go through that. But I have felt empowered since my diagnosis, because now at least I know what it is, and I feel like I can be an activist in some way, and in some way, like I kind of heard you talking about this before, but when you're in a wheelchair, when you're going through stuff and people see you, they're always just like, you're such an inspiration,
Yes.
and that always bothered me. And I was like, I'm an inspiration just because I'm in, like, if they don't know me, you know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
Just because I'm in a wheelchair, just like there's a lot more to me than that, But
Absolutely.
but I I started realizing just in this past year that I always stood up to be in a picture and I hid my wheelchair out of the picture. I just, it took me a long time. Like, so if there's pictures of me on Facebook, it'd because one of my friends took it. Because if it was ever like, hey, let's take a picture, I would stand up because I could.
Oh yeah.
And now it's like at the point where I can't really even do that. But I, something changed in me where I felt like maybe it's okay to be an inspiration because there are other people out there that are going through this change, like people that have gone from being mobile to immobile, and they need to understand what that's like. And I've spoken about it a lot, like on Facebook, and been more open about it when I used to kind of hide all of my health stuff and I didn't
Hmm.
want people to know about it. And so I've been speaking out, and then I've been getting huge responses from people that hey, my kid's going through this. It sounds like it might be EDS, or who do I go to for this, or, just things like that. And I've been trying to let it in that, not necessarily that I'm an inspiration, but that I can show people that, you shouldn't be ashamed of being in a wheelchair, and that
Yeah.
I don't know why, because when I'm kind of since I was a little kid, I always, volunteered and helped like my disabled classmates. And I've always been like
Hmm.
an LGBT activist and been at the Black Lives Matter protests. And then when it came to me and my disability or me being different, I just didn't want to accept it or take a stand on it. Like it took me a long time to like
Wow.
accept myself. And
Hmm.
so I think like once I put a name to it and I understood what was going on, and then I realized that I could help other people, and that it was really just about me accepting myself and where I am, and it's in turn helped some other people as well, but it's mostly helped me to accept myself and not fight it.
Yeah, I think that's so so great because as you said in the uh, episode of the podcast where we played the wheelchair user bingo, and that was one of the things of you're an inspiration, and it's like I said then, like it doesn't bother me too much, but hearing what you just said, I'm not just an inspiration because I use a wheelchair, because I have a disability. It's but I think everybody can inspire other people to do things, and just find hope somewhere, uh, through their actions, and how they live their life. And it's
Always say
really,
that to you, like, they're always like, I could never get through what you've gotten through and be so positive, and but it's like you see people go through all kinds of things, and people are amazing and they're resilient, and
yes.
they inspire me for sure.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you had said a few minutes ago about having a great support for your friends and people in your life. Um, it's like I have no
Huge.
choice but to do some things sometimes, because my friends will just they won't let me do anything otherwise. And so it's really very important that people, that you have the great support system surrounding you. That is great encouragement for sure. That I'm grateful for my great team of people that keep me moving, keep me going, and especially through this COVID-19 situation where I wasn't out for a long time, and just having people drop off things, and uh, pick up things from the store for me and drop them off, and that was all very very kind and very helpful, but definitely necessary since I was unable to really get out. So I
Yeah.
think the support teams is a great big factor in making it through a lot of the tough times for me. I know that's
I have an
uh,
amazing husband who's been with me for 20 years through the whole
wow.
thing and is so, he's so amazing. And I have the best friends and family that are so supportive. And so I always feel like I'm one of the luckiest people in the world, no matter what I'm going through. Like, I just always, I try to, even if, like, we all have our bad days where we might feel sorry for
Yes.
ourselves, but like, I always just go to gratitude, and I just have so much gratitude for the people in my life. And that's what really gets me through everything, for sure. And I had thought like I'd be okay with COVID because I've been home. I've been home for like the past 5 years, really. Like, a lot of the last 5 years has been spent in bed and unable to do things and having different surgeries and different tests and all of these things. And so at the beginning of COVID, I was like cheering on everybody and letting them know, hey, you're gonna get through this. Like, it's hard at first, but you'll get through it.
Yeah.
And then just in the last little while, I've realized how many things like that I had put in place to help me stay sane.
Yeah.
Like, we would always have, even if, I'd be in, sometimes I'm in bed for like 2, 3 weeks where I just can't move or can't do anything. But then, when I'm starting to feel better, my husband will make sure that, our friends come out and visit and spend the night. And so we have people coming, or we'll have a play, or, we'll have something to look forward to all the time. And I have two amazing goddaughters that I spend a lot of time with. And so I didn't realize how much, because I'm like, I'm home all the time. I've been in bed for months at a time. Like, this isn't going to be hard for me.
Right.
And I've been home since the end of February because I am immunodeficient.
Hmm.
So, besides going to the doctors, and I did go to, I did go to a protest, but I stayed very safe. But besides those two things, going to the doctors and going to a protest, I've been home, and it's gotten hard because I didn't realize I had putting all those things in place, that I did have to look forward to. So I'm trying to find new ways to stay positive and get through it. And
Yeah. It's
it's
something different.
different.
Well, I always say it's different if if you choose to stay in versus if you're forced to stay in. Like,
Yeah.
that's a whole different beast. Like, if I choose to stay in, I can stay in for weeks at a time and everything's fine. But the second they said, "Oh, you can't go out unless if it's to go to the store," well, I wanted to go to every store for everything, and I didn't need
Right.
anything. But it was, I have to go. I have to, I have to get out. But
Whenever they tell you can't do something, you're just like, I need to do that now.
right, I need to do it right now. And then just recently, I just started going out and being in small groups of my friends, and uh, I was with one of my best friends. Her and her husband are two of my best friends, and their 3-year-old son. He comes over and he sits next to me and he says, "I'm really glad you came here just to see me today." And I said, "You know what? I did. Like, that's like, I missed that kind of thing. Like, like, I'm
I
glad you
know.
missed me because I missed seeing you too. Like, it's really
Yeah. It's hard.
but it's
I've had
yeah, it
even like
was
my goddaughters come in, we'll be in the backyard, like 6 feet apart. But it's
right.
just so strange to not hug them and to not like
Yes.
have that. Like, that's something that I'm definitely missing. Like, I didn't realize how much I hug people and need that.
Yes. Yes. I just had that conversation with somebody today. She said, she was saying, I think I might be up to, 15 people I've hugged. And I said, well, I think I'm still under 10. So,
I haven't hugged anybody, like, my
yeah.
husband, but I
Yeah.
haven't hugged anyone since this because, I got to
Yeah.
be super careful being,
Right. Yeah. It's really,
it's been hard.
it's been very difficult. And, thankfully, as I mentioned, I was able to stay, somewhat creative and come up with different things. And the nonprofit I work for, I was able to work with some of our board members and create some online content for them over the last couple of months. So that's helped keep my mind busy and creating content for this podcast and things. And so
I
it's
think
been
what's
really,
been awesome about it is, like because, I've been mostly in bed for like the good part of the time for the last few years. And
mhm,
so, there would be weeks at a time where I couldn't even get up to go to the other room or anything like that. Now, since like COVID, people are alone and they're isolated. And so now I'm actually like getting together with my friends on Zoom and things like that, like way more often than we normally do, because I think,
yes,
and it's my bad, because like when I'm not feeling well, I do just isolate and I just like have to get through whatever I'm going through, and I don't let people in and I don't want to
hmm,
complain, and so I go through it alone until I get to the point where I'm like, I need people, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
this has shown people what it's like to when you have somebody in your life who has health issues or things like that, when they're alone a lot and not able to go places. I think it's made people really understand that, and it's made it like my girlfriends and I have Zoom meetings all the time, and we're connecting more because everybody's stuck in now. And so
right,
in a weird way, like I'm seeing and talking to my friends a lot more since COVID than I was before, and it's really
yeah,
reminded me to not isolate like I do when I get in bad,
yeah. I
not
think it
doing very
has.
well.
Yeah, I think it has really helped bring, in some ways, it helped bring people closer together to, to realize that, you haven't talked to certain people in a long time, and, help you reconnect with some people, and just to check in with people more often. If nothing else, more than that, I think it's been very helpful for me in that way to, just make sure that, I check in on people, and people that have checked in on me, some people who I haven't heard from in a long time. And it's just, hey, I'm just checking in on you, and people that live in different states and things like that, just to, see how we're doing here in Jersey. And so it's been really, I think it has brought people closer together in a lot of ways, for sure. So, what would you like the world to know about people who have disabilities? About your disability, or any disability, or just a
Well, I
final
think
word?
something I've learned from being somebody who was mobile and kind of able to fake it for a long time, like even though I was in pain and things like that, to going to completely um, immobile at
Mhm.
times. For me, like, growing up doing theater and things like that, like as soon as I got in a wheelchair, I thought like, I'm done. Like I'll never be able to do anything like this again. And Ali Stroker, she won a Tony Award
I
for
love Alice.
Oklahoma,
I love her.
and I saw her on the Tonys, and she was playing Ado Annie, which is like the sexy, fun, awesome
Yes.
role that you always want to play. She wasn't playing like a grandma or like a, sad person or anything like that. She was
Right.
playing the hot, fun, you know, the girl that you want to play in the show. And when I
Yes.
saw her win the Tony, I was like, oh my gosh, like maybe there is a world where people in wheelchairs can be on stage and it won't just be playing the grandma or something like that. Maybe there will be, our eyes will be open. I just think like representation really matters. And like for me, like I've been in a wheelchair, I think the past about 9 years, and it's like Halloween comes around and I Google like characters in wheelchairs, because I don't know why I thought I needed to have to be in a wheelchair or whatever, but you can't find anything or anyone that's cute. So I there's I just think that representation of especially women, like I'm a big Walking Dead fan. And
Yes.
I was watching
I used to be a big Walking Dead fan. I got out of it somehow. I don't even know how I got out of it, but
so I was watching Fear the Walking Dead, And
Okay.
Daryl Mitchell is in there, and he's in a wheelchair. And he was talking about, because he was in a car accident, so he was acting before he was in a wheelchair, then he's acting when he's in a wheelchair. And he said, this wheelchair is just what gets me from one place to the next. Like, this isn't who I am. It's just the thing that
Wow.
moves me from this place to this place. And I think that helped me a lot too, to be like, it doesn't define who I am. And that, I just think that, so those are the two things. I think that there needs to be more representation of people with disabilities of all different types.
Hmm.
And I think that for people with disabilities to know that, we're still who we are as people, and our disability or our illness or whatever it is, that it doesn't define us.
Yes, thank you so much. That was great. And you mentioned two people that I would love to have on my podcast, so I'm hoping that they
Let's do
both
a
hear this.
shout out. And
Yeah, shout out to Ali Stroker and Daryl Mitchell. Just if you're
try to
hearing
get them
this,
on.
yes. So my fun story about Ali, I met her the week before she won the Tony Award.
Stop. Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
So we have a mutual friend, and I work for a nonprofit that builds inclusive playgrounds, and we had an event, and one of the auction items was 2 tickets to go see her in Oklahoma. And she agreed to do a meet and greet with the 2 winners. And then I also ended up going to the same show. So
I'm
I met
so
her the week before she
jealous.
won the Tony Award. And
Wow.
she was actually also, I saw her February 28th of this year at Lincoln Center. She did a one-woman concert
Oh, I'm gonna have
at
to.
Lincoln Center, which was, I guess, 3 weeks or so before everything here in New York and New Jersey shut down. So that
Yep.
was like one of my last outings. My mom and I went up to New York, and I ended up seeing her there too, and getting a picture with her there.
That
So
is
she
amazing.
and back to what you said about her in Oklahoma, seeing that show and the way that they did the show and incorporated her wheelchair into the show, um, just as simple as having the male lead character like sit on her lap in the
Mm-hmm.
show, and it amazed me the way that they uh, worked around her chair and incorporated her being a wheelchair user into the actual show itself, just to even the choreography when the people were stomping their feet, she was banging her chair up and down to like make the same sound. I was amazed by that show, seeing
It's amazing.
seeing her in that role, and as you said, playing that lead character of a woman who just happened to be in a wheelchair, and you honestly forgot about it.
I'm sure. I was gonna say you probably didn't even notice it. You're just looking at her and hearing her voice, and
Yeah, you
it
really
doesn't.
forgot about it, and it was just it was, and I remember sending her an email after that and just saying, she inspired me to like step it up, because it's just like that was I was just so impressed with the way that they did that show, that whole staging of everything, and yeah, so
I
she's
hope more theaters will have people that are in wheelchairs or with other disabilities that can play the parts they always wanted to play and not be
yes,
limited. Like, that's what it
yeah,
showed me. It was like really, really big. Like, I had never even thought that would ever be possible until I saw her. And it was just
right,
like, oh. And then your
yeah,
cousin Brooke told me, when you're ready to audition, I'll put you in a show.
that's
So
right, yeah.
she is a director, and she's very good at it.
Yeah, Brooke is
All
great. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about that we can add into this, or um,
think
anything?
so.
Okay, but I this is a great conversation. I learned so much, and I definitely will. I look forward to posting this episode and hopefully being able to educate other people, and hopefully someone will listen to it and be able to get some help and some pointers from what you were saying, and just to bring awareness to EDS. And I just really, I really appreciate that you took the time out to talk with me tonight.
Thank you so
And
much. I'm honored.
yes, you're welcome. And if there's anything that anything else that you would like to talk about, or any other topics that you can think of, that would be great. For the podcast, I'd love to have you back on. And when we get Allie Stroker on, you can be a special guest to come on with Allie.
Please. My dream.
Yes. So I will. I'll definitely be in touch. And again, I appreciate you taking time out to talk with me tonight.
I hope you feel better, and I hope you're safe in this hurricane.
Thank you. Yes, it passed. The hurricane definitely passed within hours yesterday. So we're in the clear now. It's
feel better.
Thank you very much, and I hope you are having a good rest of your evening. I know it's still early there, so
I know it's so late for you. I'm sorry. Well, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for agreeing to do this, and I will be in touch. And have a good night.
You too.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Our View Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the Our View Podcast on Anchor, Apple Podcast, or Spotify. New episodes will be released on the 15th and 30th of every month. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Our View for Life. That's OURVIEW, 4 LIFE. Do you want to help change the tone of conversation among your family and friends? Head over to our website for some Our View merchandise. Our website is www.our-view.com/merchandise. I thank you for listening. Have a great day and take care.